Welcome back to Season 4 of the Sober Motivation Podcast. Join me, Brad, each week as my guests and I share incredible and powerful sobriety stories. We're here to show sobriety is possible, one story at a time. Let's go. In this episode of the podcast, we have Chris, who shares his powerful journey to sobriety. Chris recounts memories from his childhood dealing with an alcoholic father and how high school brought its own set of challenges. He discusses his early drinking days and his deep dive into addiction during college and the subsequent move to Los Angeles that intensified his struggle with alcoholism and drug use. Chris discusses his turning point, the life-changing experience in rehab, and his continuous journey in sobriety. And this is Chris's story on the Sober Motivation Podcast. How's it going, everyone? Brad here. Thanks for checking out another episode here on the podcast. Great story coming right up with Chris. Before we get into it, I just want to mention that we're doing another 30-day trial for anybody new who wants to join the Sober Motivation community. It's an incredible place to get connected. Join some of our meetings. We have meetings every single day inside of the app, a bunch of different hosts, and getting connected with other people, sharing. The app runs 24/7 with everyone cheering each other on and just getting connected on that level and being around other people that are on the same journey of living a life alcohol-free and thriving, really doing incredible things. Some people have been around the app for a couple of years, plugging into meetings, hosting meetings. We now have a speaker series as well, where we have people that have maybe been on the podcast or that haven't, that are coming into the community and sharing their story, answering your questions, helping out in any way that they can. So if you want to check it out, the Sober Motivation community, the app, everything, I'll drop the link down in the show notes below. Pick up and try out the 30-day free trial, and I hope to see you in a meeting soon. Now let's get to Chris's story. Welcome back to another episode of the Sober Motivation Podcast. Today we've got my buddy Chris with us. Chris, how are you?
Doing great, Brad. Thanks for having me, man. How are you?
Yeah, man, I'm well, dude. Glad we could connect and, have your story for everybody to check out.
Yeah, thanks, man.
So what were things like for you growing up?
I had a great childhood. I have fond memories of being raised by a wonderful mom and an alcoholic dad. So the gene definitely runs deep in my family, but my mom covered for my dad and was just over the top with love and kindness and gentleness, and made sure all of our experiences in life were just, wonderful. And so I have fond memories of growing up. I had a great childhood. Things, by the time I got to high school, things took a turn for the worse. My dad's drinking and using was getting out of control. It was starting to affect, his relationship with us and the family, and the house became a little volatile. And so, my mom gave him an ultimatum and said, it's either us or that. And if it's us, you got to go away for a while, get some help. And, here I am, a freshman in high school. My body's changing. My life is changing all around me. And I don't have my dad around. And my dad is, in rehab, getting help and trying to figure his deal out. And so, high school for me was challenging. It was tough. I would say probably those 4 years of developing into manhood was just really challenging. I didn't like who I was. I didn't like how slow my body was developing. All the kids around me were getting bigger. All the kids around me's voices were changing quicker. And, I was a late bloomer. And so obviously, got put in the friend zone with every girl. I was always the safe guy. I was always a safe bet, man. Take Chris to the dance, man. He's not going to try to hook up with you. He's not going to try to make a move on you. He's the friend. He's the constant friend. Yeah, that obviously, beat my ego up a little bit growing up. But yeah, man, high school was tough. My dad eventually came back from rehab and was sober and was working the deal that we do. And a lot of things got a little bit better. But my high school was tough. High school years were really challenging for me.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing all of that too, man. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Cedar Rapids, Iowa.
Okay.
Yeah.
big graduating class there at your school?
No, so I had a small graduating class, about 115 people. So yeah, I went to a Catholic school, and so it was a pretty tight community, pretty tight school. We were a pretty close bunch of kids growing up.
Yeah. Well, yeah, at 120. Yeah,
We knew,
that's
yeah, everybody knew
with-
everybody. We all knew each other's families. We all knew each other's parents, and it was kind of like a nice way to grow up.
yeah. So do you find that was helpful as opposed to being able to slide into the background and maybe a bigger community or?
I find that it was helpful in the sense that I was a late bloomer for everything, right? So not only did it take my body years to grow into an adult, I think I hit my growth spurt and hit puberty by the time I was a senior, which definitely led to eventually my drinking. But also I feel like I was raised in a bubble, that close-knit Catholic community. We didn't have a lot of the peer pressures that some of the other kids, outside our community had. And so I feel like I was a late bloomer in the sense that I didn't start really drinking until I was a junior or senior in high school.
Yeah. So you did start drinking in high school then?
I did. Yeah.
What's that like when you recall the memories there?
Dude, I got hammered for the first time the summer between my junior and my senior year. And I remember it so vividly. I was drinking Ice House beers. You remember those Ice House beers back in the day? They were the heavy hitters, right?
Really? Ice House. No, I mean, we just drank like Pabst Blue Ribbon and stuff. I mean, I wouldn't call it heavy, but it was in the price range. But okay, yeah, Ice House.
It's OG. Those Pabst Blue Ribbons, OG. I like that. Yeah, Ice House, man. I had, I think, 8 of them. And I remember I was counting them because I wanted to feel different. I wanted to feel drunk. All my friends around me were, experiencing what drinking was like and getting their buzz on. And I wanted to feel that high. And I did it, man. But I overdid it from the first time I got hammered. I overdid it. I blacked out. I passed out. Woke up in the morning, was so proud that I had gotten drunk finally, and I wanted to do it again. And I wanted to do it quickly again. I loved it. I loved the feeling. I loved how it just numbed all my insecurities. It just numbed who I was. And it made me feel like I was somebody different, the guy that I really wanted to be,
Yeah. No, I can relate with a lot of that too. I'll always remember the first time that I got drunk too. And it felt like one of the first times that I felt seen in my life. Like people noticed me. And
yeah.
it was, and everything else melts away, right? But I'm with you too, man. I hear it a lot on the podcast. A lot of people share, even from the first time, man, it was that to the extreme, right? And it was the same for me, man. My world was spinning. And for a little bit after that, I was like, oh, never again, obviously. But then, maybe 24 hours after that, I was like, man, we have to get back to making that possible. I wasn't really plugged in, I wasn't really connected much before that point with the partiers and stuff. I wasn't like, quote unquote, cool or accepted at that level. But after that, and that was another thing, another sort of box that alcohol checked for me early on is now it was easily to be accepted into these other groups, right? If you drank, you had this in common and it was just like open arms, right? Let's party.
Yeah.
Or where do you go with things from there?
Man, isn't it funny that real quick, you get off that initial high and people like us it only takes a quick 24 hours before you want to do it again. I was obsessed with it, but again, I wasn't really, at the time, I was kind of like you, Brad, wasn't really plugged in, and eventually got plugged in with that scene because I was now known as a guy who would drink and get hammered with, my friends. And senior year was okay. I feel like every weekend we were dabbling with drinking, staying away from the hard stuff. I had some friends that were, smoking weed, stayed away from that. That wasn't really my thing. But by the time I got to college, I was looking back on my story. I was drinking alcoholically, 4 or 5 nights a week in college. And again, drinking to blackout. There was no like, oh, let's go out and have a couple beers after a test, or let's go have a couple beers for happy hour. No, it was like, I want to be hanging from a ceiling fan somewhere within an hour, And so it started to get out of hand for sure.
Yeah. In college too. And I mean, that's a very relatable story, I think, for people too. You go to college, and especially somebody like me who is already uncomfortable in my own skin, you throw me into college where I think there was a lot of us that were, and this was,
Yeah.
our quote unquote solution to hang out. When I was in college too, I couldn't never really hang out with people sober. It was like the start for me in a sense too. All my relationships were starting to be centered by drinking and partying and all of that lifestyle stuff that we did at any point here too. I mean, to the point of blacking out and stuff. Anybody mentioning anything to you, or you thinking anything too about, I picked up speed pretty quick with this whole drinking thing, or not really?
No, that was the thing. That's what we did. I joined a fraternity, and it was acceptable behavior, drinking like that.
Yeah.
But to what you were saying earlier, man, there were a couple guys in my fraternity that didn't drink, that got sober, early on. And I have to tell you, sadly, if I look back in the way I behaved towards those folks, it's like disgusting. I look down on those people like, oh, you don't party? What's wrong with you? You don't drink? What's wrong with you? And it took me getting sober to realize, what a shitbag that I was. And, how dare I, judge somebody else for not drinking? Because now I'm all of a sudden a guy that doesn't drink, and I certainly don't want anybody making fun of me for not drinking. But, back in college, man, that was 100% acceptable behavior. You drink to blackout. Yeah. In my group, the guys I ran around with.
Yeah. How did you do with your academics part of everything?
Dude, I got through, man. I got through. I was a C student. I was a C student at best, a C plus student, but I passed. I got my degree, and that for me was all that mattered. I went to school to party. I wanted the freedom and flexibility to do whatever I wanted.
Yeah. And that's what you did.
I did, man. That's what I did, Brad.
Yeah. Any trouble for you though, man? That's when I started to get in trouble, was with college and just struggling to keep it between the lines, right? Underage too. Any trouble for you or no?
Man, I don't remember getting hardly any trouble. I mean, I got some minor possessions, and I got some minor infractions for drinking and doing things I shouldn't have been doing, but no major issues in college. It wasn't until I got out of college and started dabbling with drugs that things took a turn for me, and I started to get in trouble. And, really my life at that point was starting to just unravel. I just became obsessed with being effed up.
Yeah. Well, so what do you do after college? Do you start working or?
Yeah, man. I took a job in Kansas City. I went to Iowa State University. So I was a cyclone and moved down the highway about 3 hours to Kansas City because I was a small town kid growing up and wanted to experience the quote unquote big city, So yeah. Kansas City was like the closest one to us. And I took a job as an account executive at a newspaper selling advertising. And that's all we did was drink after work. And it's so funny now that I'm 40, I'm not 48, I'm 49. I'm 49 these days, man. And if I think back to when I was 22 right out of college, man, my body was in, like, I can stay out until 3 a.m, dude, and get up at 8 o'clock and slay the day. I mean, it was like my hangover, no big deal. I could work with the hangover. I could work with bruises on my body and not think anything of it. And I mean, obviously the older I get, the more banged up I got, but I couldn't imagine, drinking like that nowadays. But anyways, I digress. Yeah. So I took a job at a newspaper down here, and that's when things started to get real crazy for me. Going out every night, drinking, And then I started doing drugs. I dabbled with cocaine for the first time when I was 22.
Yeah.
And dude, I'll tell you what, man, I remember everything about that night. Everything. I remember what I was wearing. I remember what the weather was like. I remember what we were doing. I remember who I was with. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm in trouble. This
Yeah.
cocaine business is going to be the death of me.
Yeah. Were you drinking too?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, yeah. That's always the thing. Eh? There's a lot of people that share too, like the alcohol is the trigger in one way or another for the cocaine use. A lot of people share, like if they're not drinking, they're not doing cocaine. I was that's the way I was for me. So you get introduced to this and it just hits just as much or more than the first time you drank.
It hit more.
Yeah.
Yeah, that euphoric feeling, that sped up heart, that sped up, like, just everything was just in 4D, dude. It was just like coming at me. And dude, I loved it. I wanted more of it. I could not stop. The problem was I was new at it. So I didn't know anybody that had it. And, whenever it came out at a party, I was the first one to jump in, but I didn't know where to get it or how to get it. And so I like made the decision to move to LA when I was 24.
So the decision to move to LA because the cocaine was there? And it easier or?
I wanted to live life. I wouldn't say I moved out there because the cocaine was there. I moved out to LA because I wanted to live life. I wanted to party. I wanted to live the life and again, be free like I was when I first joined that fraternity, away from my mom and dad and my siblings. Like I wanted to experience something that Kansas City couldn't offer, right? And if that was drugs and rock and roll, then I was definitely open to it. And so, I moved out to LA when I was 24 and I lived out there for 6 years, man. And that's when my alcoholism and my addiction got out of control. I mean, 100% I was a mess.
When you moved out there to LA, thinking back too to earlier in your story too, where your dad went to rehab and get help in anything. Are you thinking about that at any point too, about where things are headed for you? Is it just in that beginning stage?
Yeah, dude, that's a great question. In the back of my mind, especially when I got out to LA and I knew my recreational habit had become over-consuming, overwhelming, right? I knew that eventually I was probably going to have to quit or take a breather or take a pause. I don't think I thought I'd ever end up in rehab, but as things progressed throughout those years, and especially when I couldn't sleep, and I was up for all hours of the night, things progressed. I started thinking, maybe rehab is the place for me.
Yeah. And that's at 24 or that's a little bit further?
That's a little bit down the road. Yeah. Down the road.
But you could, draw back on that experience. What's your family's reaction to you moving around and everything going on? Are they aware of anything or no?
Yeah, my mom and dad knew that I was drinking excessively. They didn't know about the drug use. They just thought I had a drinking problem. They kept the drug use from a lot of close friends and family.
Yeah. So what do you do when you touch down in California?
You get right after it. I mean, you know what I mean?
Do you start working though? This is your newspaper marketing or?
Yeah. I had a job lined up outside. I had a job lined up in LA, started working for a newspaper out there and was back at it. I mean, back at it every night. There was something to do. There was somewhere to go. And yeah, man, I was living the life. It was a fun, several years that I was out there.
Yeah. Did things come crashing down at some point soon, or did that take a while yet?
It took about 4 years.
Yeah.
Again, man, I was hitting it hard every night. And, towards the end of my stay in LA, I think I was probably 28, 29. I got fired from a job. I'd been at the job for 30 days, showed up to work maybe 15 of the 30 days. The other 15 days I was still up,
Yeah.
trying to search for more party. That was the first sign of, okay, maybe things are going south here. And so I started to isolate a lot. I didn't want to be around people. I just wanted to be by myself and with drugs and alcohol, and started calling into work. I got another job. I started calling into work all the time and started showing up to work, high from the night before, or from, doing whatever on the way into work. And things just started to unravel pretty quickly for me. I thought that it would be a good idea to move back to Kansas City, because I remembered that in Kansas City, I couldn't find drugs as often and as easy as I could out in LA. And so I thought my problem was geographical. I'm sure, you've heard that before, right? So I thought LA was my problem and not me. And so at 29, I moved back to Kansas City, and yeah, man, left it all behind in LA.
Yeah. That life. Were you dating or have a lot of friendships and stuff, or was it kind of party acquaintances, or what's
They were
that
all
like?
they were all party acquaintances. No significant friendships. They were all, guys that I'd go out and drink and party with. And any romantical relationship I had with anyone lasted less than, a handful of months, because my drinking and drug use got in the way. And I mean, I remember several times that, girls that I was dating at the time said, look, I can't be with somebody that's gonna, drink and party like this. And I always chose the party. I always chose the party. It was such an easy decision for me at the time.
Yeah. And then it can feel, when you're in it, it just can feel so good, I think, sometimes, man. I reflect back to like my restaurant working days when we used to party and we had the group of people. And I would think to myself sometimes going through that, I said, man, this is just beautiful, right? You hit that part of the buzz, before the crash, or before, for me anyway, I couldn't control how much more I drank. So once I got to that little spot, I was like, oh, this thing's going to go one of two ways: blackout, disastrous, or maybe I'll be able to coast it into the spot and just feel really bad tomorrow. But I hit that spot and say, oh man, this is just so great. Look at all of us, all my buds, all my pals. We're having such a good time. And, we did have some good times, man. But I just always question, when I look back, the authenticity of it. Was there anything actually there? And I'm like, I don't talk with any of those people anymore. Not because they're bad people, but it's just naturally, I don't know. I just don't. I think I thought in the moments we had a lot more in common and we're closer maybe than, I don't know, maybe than we actually were.
Yeah, I feel you and I hear you. And, a lot of most of the conversations I remember having when I was out with my drinking buddies were the remember wins. Remember when we did that? Remember when we did that? Let's do that again. Remember, that's about as deep as it ever went with some of those party guys,
Yeah.
And to your point about, the good times, one of my favorite things to do when I was, getting after it was blacking out and being told what I did in the morning. I love that, man. That feeling like of getting started in the night and knowing that I was going to be blacked out at some point, that between the brownout and the blackout, knowing that I was going to do something, it was going to be crazy, and I'm going to hear about it in the morning. I used to live for that. I love that, which is so reckless. I mean, it's such reckless thinking,
Yeah. I guess everybody's going to have a kind of a different experience too with that. Man, for me, it was the unpredictability of getting behind the wheel or not getting behind the wheel. For me, it was like, it was that, man. It wasn't a massively frequent experience that I went through, but there were times where I could have put a piece of paper in between me making it out of a situation alive, and things could have went the other way, So it was like, man, but I'm with you too. There were those times where it was just, I don't know, man, it was strangely celebrated too. Like even when I was in college and in the tail end of it, like it was, and I loved it, man, because a guy with low self-esteem and no confidence and lacking maybe in all these areas of personal development. I mean, people thought I was fun to have around, but I wasn't fun to have around for things that I was proud of. But it was almost like either don't have the social connection or kind of do a few things that are silly and maybe risky to have it. Connection, I think, to humans is so important. So I was willing to sort of risk my own well-being, day after day, just to have a place to maybe call home.
Yeah. You figure that out too. When you get sober, you look back on those moments and you're like, yeah, to your point earlier, was that really an authentic relationship, or was I just in it to entertain my friends and be accepted? I felt that a lot. I felt that a lot, especially early on. With me early on, the drinking, when it was fun and it was exciting and you didn't know where the night was going to take you, I felt like I belonged. I felt like I was that wild card that could bring something to the night that would make people laugh or would get people high on their spirits. That was like my role when I was drinking, But towards the end there, dude, I was isolating so bad that I didn't want to be around anybody, because I started to get super weird too. I was like the weird guy,
The weird guy. There's a lot of people too, right? It transforms into that. And I think for a variety of different reasons, but it transforms into this isolation, right? We don't want somebody looking over our shoulder, checking what we're doing. And I mean, we don't want to share with anybody. You know what I mean? We just want to all to ourselves and do things the way we want to do it. That's the way I did anyway. I did towards the end. I didn't want people around counting drinks. Like I hated going to buddies' places. They were like, come over for a beer. And, these were like probably closer to normies than somebody that struggled with what I do. But they were just going too slow. And I'm like, boys, let's get it.
Yeah.
Less chatter, more drinking, guys.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I just wanted to go at my own pace, and I didn't want anybody keeping track. And I sure as heck didn't want to hear anybody say anything about it. So that's where, I can relate to that too. I mean, I had a cocaine stretch too. And, it was mostly going out in the bars and the bathrooms and blah, all that sort of routine and spend all of my money.
Yeah.
And I lost jobs, man. I lost jobs because I used to work at restaurants. That was my bread and butter, man. I was just the ultimate line cook. And,
a lot of it running through there.
Yeah. Go to the bathroom during a shift, I mean, I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
15 times. Manager calls me. Yeah, Brad, we need you to come in a little bit early tomorrow. I knew what that was about. I never showed up for that, for that sit down. Right. So it, wreaked havoc on my life for sure. And then, I remember the last time I actually did cocaine, I was visiting with this girl, and her parents had this beach house right on the water there in North Carolina. And I picked up some stuff, and we were sitting out on the balcony of this beach thing, and it all got wet from the moisture in the air. And I was just so upset because that's it, man. I mean, that was it for it. And that was the last time, man. And I was just like, I'm going to, erase that. I filled in the gaps with other things, but that was the last time for that. But it's interesting.
You know what? That's so funny you bring that up. So my girlfriend at the time when I was in LA surprised me with a trip to Catalina Island. And, we took a helicopter out there. It was like a birthday present or something. She went over the top on it. It was awesome. And I had a little bit of cocaine with me, and we get over there and we each do a little bit of it, and it's gone. It was just a little bit, right? We didn't bring enough. And dude, I remember being like stuck on this island. She had got this beautiful hotel, and we were like doing the whole thing, right? And I was like coming out of my skin, like, where am I going to find cocaine? Like, I am on this island. No one is around. I don't know anybody. I can't call anybody. And we went out to a couple bars, and I was trying to find drugs from random people that I thought looked like they partied. And I was asking random people if they had drugs. I mean, that is crazy, man. But it consumed me. It's all I thought about it. And needless to say, we get back to LA, and, that girl left me, rightfully so, left me right away. But that was all I was focused on when I was over there.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And it takes away our ability to even be present, right? I mean, people share it too with alcohol and everything, right? Even though our body might be somewhere, kid's soccer game or maybe a concert or a sporting event or a family gathering, if we're not drinking or we're not using, it's like we're thinking about next time
Yeah.
we're going to be drinking or using. It even removes us from those moments. What's the turning point for you here, Chris?
Good. Yeah, man. Moved back to Kansas City. And man, I'll tell you a quick story about Kansas City real quick. And I'll tell you about my turning point. Right. So it's important because it's that, remember I said I thought I had a geographic problem, right? Well, I'd been flying back to Kansas City a few times to look at houses. I was going to buy a house because I thought that if I bought a house, that would domesticate me, right? I would do Home Depot things on the weekends and I'd build fences and, fix the toilet and things like that, which by the way, there's not a handy man bone in my body, but I thought that maybe this would occupy my time, right? And I wouldn't drink and I wouldn't party. So I closed on a house. The first week I was back in Kansas City, closed on a house. It was a Friday afternoon. I went, signed the papers, picked up the keys to my house for the very first time. I'm on the way to open the door to my new house for the very first time. First time homeowner, super pumped. I get a call from a friend, old friend, said, "Hey man, I heard you're back in town. And a bunch of guys are meeting out for happy hour. Why don't you join us?" I'm like, perfect. I'm thinking to myself, one drink is not going to hurt, man. I haven't seen these guys in 5 years. Would love to catch up with them. Right. And I went out, met those guys for a drink, and that drink turned into a 6-day bender. And I was out on the town for 6 full days. I didn't open the door to my new house for 6 freaking days, dude. That house sat vacant. I'm waiting for the new owner to come in and show it a little love. But dude, I was out partying. And so my geographic problem really, obviously it was me, but it's so funny, man. I thought I could lay low and hang in Kansas City, but I couldn't. And so anyways, yeah, the turning point for me, man, was it got more and more depressing. My life became unmanageable. I got more and more isolated and became more and more weird. And I started praying. The only thing I knew to do was to turn to God and ask him for help. And I did. And about 6 months before I got sober, I just started praying that God would find me to rehab. My prayer went like this: "Dear God, help me find my way to rehab without hurting myself or hurting anyone else. Get me the help that I need." I was too big of a chicken to just walk into an AA meeting. I knew I needed rehab. I knew I needed a 30-day break. So he answered my prayer about 6 months later. I had a big weekend, man. I had a bunch of friends that were in town from college and elsewhere, and it started on a Wednesday night. And I put everything in my body except for water and food. And I was managing those highs for 5 days, and it came crashing down on that Sunday. And so Sunday afternoon, I was, rushed to the hospital and began my detox there, dude. And I knew that was the answer to my prayer. I knew in that moment that God was answering my prayer. I still today, 15 years later, get chills when I talk about that story because it was my God moment. It was my aha, burning bush moment, if you will. And at that point, I put my hands up in the air and I said, I can't do this anymore. And I knew that I'd be in rehab the next day. I just knew it. And, my brothers showed up to the hospital and they said they had already called the rehab and they had a bed for me and they dropped me off the very next day. And I haven't looked back since, dude.
Wow, man. Thanks for sharing that, Chris.
Yeah, man. Yeah, thanks.
Beautiful in one sense that it's the springboard to making the change. Were they surprised? You mentioned your brothers. You have 2 brothers?
I've got 3 brothers.
3 brothers. Wow.
Yeah, I'm the oldest of 4. And it's so, yeah, my brothers and I are really tight.
Yeah. Did they know though? Like where they did know. Okay.
They knew that I was doing drugs. They knew that I was out of control. I think secretly everybody in my family was praying that I'd get help,
Yeah. Did you ever try to get sober for stints throughout?
The promises of, hey, God, if you put me to sleep for just a couple hours here so I can go to work, I won't drink on Friday, or I won't drink this weekend, or I won't do drugs this weekend. I'll just drink, beer, or I'm not going to drink vodka tonight. I'm just going to drink beer. All of those promises I broke, but that was the extent of trying to get sober.
Yeah. Just to try to, I don't know, a fancy word out there right now is like moderation, right? Try to do try to just not go to where it sometimes does, right? Try to lessen the blow of things.
Dude, there's not one moderation bone in my body.
When it comes to anything, right?
Anything,
Yeah,
dude,
same.
anything that remotely makes me feel different, anything that makes me slightly feel happy, slightly makes me feel energetic, I will abuse. I will take it to the next level.
Well, that's great, man. And you mentioned that too, like 15 years later. What do you remember from plugging into that rehab for 30 days? Because I think there's a lot of people that go to rehab and then I don't want to say it works or it doesn't work. I'm not like a big believer on it works or doesn't work, but the seed's planted and we water it, or
Yeah.
the seed's planted and we don't water it afterwards to grow. What made you continue to water like after you leave, and what did you realize while you were there?
Such a good question. I loved my experience at rehab. I loved it. Eventually fell into admitting that I was an alcoholic, admitting that I was powerless, admitting that my life had become unmanageable. I could grasp those 12 steps. I could grasp the first, 3 steps. That was easy for me because I started going to meetings in rehab and started listening to people tell my story, And then I started seeing like super successful people tell my story in meetings. And I'm like, damn, dude, that guy's like super, like whatever. To me, it was very normalizing, this problem is affecting like everybody, it doesn't discriminate, right?
Yeah.
And plugging into the right kind of people was it for me. I'm a big fellowship. The big part of my program is fellowship. Like I need to be around similar people. Like I need to be around people that I admire and I strive to be like. And, they say, look for the guys in the room that you want a piece of, that you want something from that life that you want to aspire to.
Yeah.
I was lucky. I found those guys early on, and that helped me like tremendously. Right. And I had that pink cloud too, dude. I was like a pink cloud guy, man. I remember this lady, she was probably 75 years old and she was still coming to meetings every day. And I shared that I was worried that this pink cloud, it was like 60 days or 90 days that I was sober. And I shared in the meeting that I was worried about that pink cloud leaving, because everybody says after about 90 days out of rehab, that pink cloud goes away. And this lady came up to me after the meeting. I'll never forget it, dude. She said, that pink cloud can remain over your head for as long as you want it to. You get to choose every day. Dude, I'm like, seriously? Is that easy? That, like, for me at the time, that was some profound shit. I'm like, okay, let's go. And I think for me, that pink cloud lasted for about a year. And again, you ask about what helped me stay the course. My life just started getting better. Everything started getting better in my life, man. Finances, relationships, work. I mean, everything just started to come together. And I was a big believer early on, man, that freaking 12-step programs work.
Yeah. And be willing to plug in.
Dude, that is the biggest thing, man. I see guys that come in. I lead a meeting on Tuesday nights, and I see guys that come in and they leave right after the meeting.
Yeah.
They don't plug in, dude. And I'm like, man, why don't you come to dinner with us? Why don't you have coffee with us? Come around more than just this hour that you're in the meeting. Yeah. You got to plug in.
Yeah. Yeah. I always look at that too. I mean, I used to work in a rehab for 6 years too. And we would, you kind of have that too, man. It's like getting somebody to the point where they're comfortable to buy into, to invest in a sense, right? I always try to explain it to these guys as a savings account. Every time you go to a meeting, there's $5 in your account. Every time you share, there's another 5. Every time you talk, everything you do for your sobriety, you have a deposit. And then when shit hits the fan, because it's going to, you actually have something to draw from. But if you don't do anything and then things get difficult, you have no friends to call, you have no connections, you haven't been practicing reaching out. you have nothing to lean back on. So I remember too, man, my first meetings I went to, man, I came in late. I came in a little bit late, right? Sit in the last chair at the back.
Yeah.
And I was
Yeah.
gone before the prayer. And
Totally.
and I was at the part of my journey where I had back problems, right? Everybody was on my back, so I wanted to get them off of it. And they would say, go to meetings. So I was like, yeah, guys, I went to meetings, but I didn't learn anything or get anything out of it. I wasn't applying myself to, do anything, right? So I think it's a good point that whatever it is that we do, it's like there's a difference between showing up and like actually doing stuff that's going to help us out. If that makes any sense.
It makes perfect sense. Yes, that is such great advice. It's one thing to show up. Great, you're here. Now do something while you're here.
Yeah.
Share, make a friend, hold out a hand, welcome somebody to the meeting. Yeah, do something while you're here. Make it of value.
Yeah. Are you that scary in real life that people are like, come on, Chris, I don't want to go to dinner with Chris, man. Troublemaker that guy is. A coffee with Chris.
Yeah, dude.
Man.
I'm pretty convincing, dude. I can persuade people to have a cup of Joe with me. I'm pretty convincing, dude.
I believe it. I mean, you mentioned too, a lot of this stuff changes, in life, man. Let me know. I have this sort of thought too, just conversations over the years with people, right? We have these expectations, maybe in a sense, getting sober, right? That all these areas of our life are going to change. And I notice talking with people that if they don't change on their timeline, it's really makes it challenging for them to keep going, right? So if my relationship doesn't get better and people don't trust me in X amount of days, like I see them sliding back into the old ways because they haven't experienced sort of the growth or the benefits yet. What was that like for you as you go through it? Because we do have to realize everybody has a different story they come into this with, but like I had relationships that for some, they would never be repaired. I had some things finance wise, criminal record wise. It doesn't matter how many days sober I get. It ain't going away, but learning how to accept things. Like what was that like for you to maybe patience a little bit for things to catch up?
Man, I struggle with patience. I have zero patience. It's funny. I tell my kids all the time they need to work on their patience. And they're like, Dad, you don't have any patience. I'm like, right, damn it. But I am not a patient person. I want everything done now and on my timeline. And, somebody told me a long time ago when I first got sober is that the world doesn't work on your timeline. It works on God's timeline. And God is never late. And that slogan or meditative piece right there really helped me early on that, okay, if this is supposed to happen today, it'll happen. If it's not, it might not be intended to happen, or it just might happen at a different time. And so I became pretty good at working with that. But, a specific example would be, I came out of rehab with $100,000 credit card debt. And, I put everything on my credit card for the past 10 years. Dude, I was paying $1,200 a month in freaking interest, and I couldn't get ahead on that. And I came out of rehab destined to pay that thing off. And, it was a slow go. It was slow to get there, but I finally got it paid off. And I'm very, grateful that I was able to do that after a few years. And so, yeah, things started happening for me, but they weren't on my timeline, dude. They were on God's.
And learning how to be patient in that process. Yeah.
Yeah,
man. But that's growth. I mean, that's like the way that we used to live, though, is everything right away, instant gratification, right? Change the way we're feeling right now. But the more and more we do that, the less and less we develop anything else that may be healthier,
Right.
Anything that's going to help us. That's what I talk to a lot of people too, who are identified as gray area drinkers, right? Like in the spectrum, maybe more in the middle of the spectrum. It's like the longer we keep alcohol around, every time you're stressed, overwhelmed, something goes wrong in a relationship or a job, every time we lean on alcohol, we lean less on meditation, community, support, therapy, whatever else might help us to build in that direction of things. Heading towards wrapping up, man. Any Words of wisdom, man, over 15 years. When was that Sunday that you went to the hospital?
March 10th, 2010, dude. That was the day, man. That was my last day. So my sobriety date's March 10th, man. I'll tell you this. Here's my words of wisdom. And not that I have any wisdom. I'm just another, alcoholic drug addict that's trying to get by just for today, right?
Yeah.
But this shit works, man. The program works. Admitting that you're powerless, admitting that your life is unmanageable, admitting that, there's a higher power and that you're tapping into your higher power, whatever you call it, that stuff works. And when you lean into that, your life gets exponentially better month after month, the longer I stay sober. 100%. My life continues to get better every single month that I stay sober because I just follow other people. I'm a total copycat, dude. I'm a total leech in those meetings. I listen to what people say, and I don't do anything outstanding or anything significant. I just fall in line, and I try to be just another bump on the log. You know what I mean, dude?
Yeah, I hear you on that 100%. Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing your story. I wanted to mention too, your project, man.
Oh yeah, man.
Sober
Yeah.
City. Share with us a little bit about that and the motivation here.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, dude.
Yeah.
So I created a mobile app called Sober City, and that gives you a different sober slogan every day of the year, right? So there's 365 different sober slogans. There is a daily reflection that goes along with it. There's a daily prompt, and then there's a lighten up piece, right? So part of my sobriety I've always found humor in my life and humor in what I do. And so I try to take a humorous spin on the daily slogan, right? So you get a little bit of seriousness with the slogan. You get a daily prompt to tell you what to do. A lot of them are prayers, real short prayers of how to get dialed in closer to your higher power. And then there's a funny part that kind of ties it all together. And so, just real quick, when I was in rehab, my therapist said, "Hey man, you really need to learn these sober slogans. They help a lot of people stay sober." And then I got in the rooms and all these sober slogans were like hanging on the wall. And so I just really fell in love with the different meanings of these slogans. And so for the past couple of years, I've been writing just reflections based on my experience, based on my 15 years of experience. And so what you have is 365 slogans and daily reflections based on my experience, strength, and hope, And so it's available on the App Store and the Google Play Store. And it's super simple too. It's just a simple app, gives you the meditation of the day, and it gives you a prayer of the day if you're into that,
Yeah, beautiful, Chris. Yeah, and it's actually, I've seen a lot of apps over the years, man. And like I told you too, it's beautiful, man. It's
Thank you.
put together and got a nice flow to it. And
thanks, dude.
a couple people I know already checked it out and they're loving following along, man. So
Appreciate that, man.
Yeah, of course. And I'll drop the information for anybody who wants to check that out and to check out Chris on Instagram. We're getting Chris really moving and shaking here on Instagram too.
I appreciate that, dude.
So if you guys enjoyed this episode with Chris and you want to send him a message, make sure you hit the link down in the show notes and jump onto his Instagram page.
Yeah, thank you.
And check out the app. Well, thank you, Chris. Any closing thoughts?
Thanks, man. Thank you so much for having me on. Life is good, man. Life is so good on this side of it. You get over that hump and you get onto this side of sobriety, man. Life's beautiful. And I'm a grateful recovering addict and alcoholic and grateful to be on your show, Brad.
Yeah. Thank you, man.
Thanks, bro.
Well, there it is. Another incredible story here on the podcast. Thank you, Chris, for joining us, for sharing your story with all of us and just really letting us know what's possible if we put one foot in front of the other and just stay on this journey, all the good things to come. I'll drop also the link down in the show notes to check out Sober City USA. Chris's incredible app that it's really a lot put into this. So very impressed with it. And I'll drop the link down in the show notes for that. And I'll see you on the next one.